Hey, you're listening to the Rise of Torie podcast, where we explore the intersection between faith, fitness, and wellness. I'm your host, Torie, and I'm so glad you're joining me today on this episode. I have a very special guest, Katie. Katie, I don't know how to say your last name. I didn't even ask you that. How do you say your last name?
One. So it's Sty, like an I sty.
Yeah.
Sty and then mist.
Stymiest. Katie
Yeah.
Stymiest from Caked with Katie. And I am just so excited to have you and inspired by your journey and just your vulnerability to share online some of your stuff that we'll get into today. But first, will you introduce yourself to us?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I'm Katie Stymiest. People kind of know me as Caked by Katie, but really who I am is I am a child of God. I am also blessed to be a wife, a mother to 3 busy little ladies. We live up in northern British Columbia, Canada. It's currently beautiful outside, so there's no snow today, which is lovely. And this is kind of just where I do life, and busy and always in the kitchen and running to activities, but it's all good.
So you're a girl mom. I love it.
Yep, all girls.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute. So you're a food blogger. How did you get into food blogging and that whole space?
It has been like a really long journey, and it happened pretty organically from the very beginning to, where I am now. Basically, I used to take cake orders. And then right before COVID happened, I decided that I no longer wanted to do orders, and I wanted to move more into a blogging aspect to share my heart, to share my recipes, more of the behind the scenes stuff than just, here's a finished product of a Paw Patrol cake. And so I journeyed into blogging, and it happened to be at the perfect time because everything kind of shut down in the world. And I had this time at home now to focus on that. And I've been learning a lot since then. It's been way more than I ever expected, but it's been super fun. So I have been doing it for, 4 years now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's more the food blogging, but how did you start? What led you into doing the whole cake thing? Because listen, y'all, you have to go and check out her Instagram and look at her cakes because they are gorgeous. They are so beautiful. But how did you what brought you into just the cake baking and making? And I know you said it led into social media and food blogging, but what started the journey to begin with?
I was on maternity leave with my oldest daughter. We were even farther up north. It's pretty much winter 8 months out of the year.
Oh, wow.
And after having her, I had really bad postpartum depression and anxiety. And I found that I had her in January, so the dead of winter. And the only way that I could keep my thoughts occupied was to keep my hands busy. So I would put her on her little baby seat up on the kitchen counter and just started baking. It was this tiny little kitchen, and it was super warm. And I started making muffins for my husband's lunch. We started trying cookies and all sorts of just different things to keep myself busy and mostly to keep myself sane. And I fell in love with it. And it just began from there.
Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. And I love how God transition things, like things that we start and then it kind of molds into something different, right? Because my story is similar in that when I had my oldest, I started photography, and that evolved into, doing it as a job. And then I got into, after my youngest, I got into fitness, and then that evolved into a job. So it's just funny how, God uses our kids in different stages and stuff to kind of weave us and show us, the path of where, yeah. How do
open
you
hands and there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So how old are your girls?
They are 12, 10, and 8.
Okay, yeah. So a little bit, okay. So how do you juggle, right, the busyness, the school, the baking the cakes? How do you juggle all of that, posting, social media? How do you juggle all of that?
Um, Not well all the time.
I feel you.
I try to treat it very much like a job. So, you
Mm,
go to your office, let's say 9 to 5. I treat school hours with my kids as my job.
yeah,
So once they're at school, okay, we're at work. And then once they're home, work is done.
yeah.
Obviously there's overlaps when I have um a client collaboration that I need to post on a weekend,
Mhm,
anything like that. But I try to be as organized as possible, to have everything pre-ready to go. So it's literally just a push of the button, and then
mhm.
I'm not on my phone
Yeah,
all day long, 24/7.
yeah.
Um, I try to keep it that scheduled. And some days I'm really good at it, some days not so much.
Yeah, I feel you. It's learning as you go, right? That's how I feel like social media is it's one way at one time and then it's different
Oh, yeah.
and we have to be so mindful to, yes, it's a job and it's our livelihood for us in a certain way, but also the family balance, right? Of how
Yeah.
do so yeah, that's kind of how I am too, of I try and schedule certain like work hours
Yeah.
but man, it's hard sometimes
It
to
is. And
not
yes,
be checking and
hmm and it's because it is always evolving, especially with social media, and there takes some time that you have to put into it to kind of figure out, what's going on, what's next. Um, that some days it's going to be great and you
Mhm.
like really nail it and you're super present as a mom.
Yeah.
And some days you're like super great as a employee for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And the family stuff you didn't nail. And
Mhm.
I think you have to give yourself a lot of grace.
Mhm.
We're all just still figuring it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it looks different from when you started 4 years ago in the midst of COVID. It's so different than and I feel like that was almost this line in the sand of, okay, social media is going to change forever now because of what we went through 4 years ago.
Absolutely.
Um have you had any trolls or any like hate on social media or you have
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes. You wouldn't think that like
you're just posting beautiful cakes. Like who can hate on
who
that?
why does a cake get you so mad? It's always delicious. Yes, absolutely. There's, hate and trolls and whatnot. I've definitely gotten a thicker skin when it's
Mhm,
come to it. Um, And a funny thing that I think now is especially when I post something and something goes viral
mhm,
and you start to see like the hate comments and stuff, that's when I know that something's doing well.
mhm.
And I just always remember you got to take everything with a massive grain of salt,
Oh yeah.
and that I see anytime I get, messages, hate messages or DMs or anything of people expressing their dislike of me or my views or my beliefs.
Mhm.
Um, it's an opportunity that I think God gives me to just even pray for that person, to
Mm,
um, be a light in
mm.
my response.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah, that's so good. The reminder of there is a real person on the other side. Even if they're hating on you, they're still a real person. And yeah, I love that reminder to pray for them because their response is normally a reflection of themselves and not
yeah,
a reflection of you and what you're doing, but what they're feeling in their heart and what they're dealing with.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I know you from Revelation Wellness, going
Yeah.
through instructor training. What brought you into that the more fitness and the health side of things, because you think cake and then you think, well, hold on a second.
Yeah,
Tori, this is a fitness, wellness
this doesn't make
podcast.
sense.
How did this, so what brought you into the wellness side or the health side or the fitness side?
I have always been an athlete. I grew up being a competitive athlete, high level, all through school and into university. And it has been my passion. I've loved that. And it's for a long time really how I defined myself
Mm,
and held my identity.
mhm,
And then I had an injury that put an end to that. And it really hugely affected my life because
mhm,
without, Katie, the competitor, the sports girl who wins, who
mhm,
was I? And it's been a long process of learning, relearning who I am in wellness
mhm,
and who God says I am in wellness. And then also where does that meet with my love of cake
mhm.
and it's just this weird like it's the gray area, right, of what it looks like in between. And it's been a lifelong journey to
Yeah,
say the
yeah,
least.
yeah. What So how, like with your cakes and then this health journey, wellness journey, fitness journey, what does that look like for you day to day of I'm baking these cakes and I'm surrounded by sugar at like because I got a sweet tooth. And
Oh yeah, you're
it would
my
be
kind of person.
yeah, it would be so hard. But like what does that look like for you? And hey, I'm making these beautiful, gorgeous cakes. And then, okay, but I'm also trying to stay healthy, stay whole, stay free. What does that look like for you in that balance?
So for me personally, it looks probably a little bit different than other people. um, I have struggled on and off with an eating disorder. And so for me, my freedom that I find where God has called me to be is that I too have a sweet tooth,
Mhm.
obviously. Um, so I make a cake, let's say, and put it up for my blog. Freedom for me means enjoying a slice of cake.
Mhm.
Means when I'm all said and done with the pictures and the videos and the writing, having a slice of cake because it's delicious and it gives me joy and
Mhm.
it fills my heart. Um, and then it also means taking the cake. Actually, if you can see out right out back there, that's the school fields that my kids go to.
Oh, yeah.
So when I'm done with all my baking, it gets shared to the staff at the school.
Oh,
It
that's
goes to the
awesome.
neighbors. It goes to friends. It goes to my husband's work.
Yeah.
Um, and so it isn't an idol in that I'm constantly thinking about it because I don't let myself have
Mhm.
it. But it's also not an idol because it's all we're eating. Um,
Mhm.
it's just that gray middle area, that quote unquote balance.
Yeah. Yeah. What does it look like in your family? Because I try and talk about because people listening are moms and busy and trying to incorporate and instill healthy values and eating, but also with keeping Jesus at the center. So what does that look like in your family for um to enjoy the cake but also teaching your kids to eat well, to take care of their bodies, to nourish their bodies? What does that look like in your kind of family dynamic?
In our family dynamic, we have a bit of a bundle of food autoimmune things.
Mm,
So we're always talking about food and how it makes us feel.
mhm.
And so that's really important about recognizing God gives us taste buds, and they are such a beautiful blessing. And I love that God gave us taste buds and so many amazing flavors. But He also calls us to honor our bodies and steward them well, and especially when we have autoimmune disease and we have things that our bodies are saying that doesn't make us feel good.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about that. We talk about fuel. I mean, it's to the point now where I'm testing recipes, most days. So there's always a couple cookies here and there, some
Mm-hmm.
muffins there. Um, we're allowed to eat
Yeah.
that. The girls are always allowed to. And it's just in stewarding them to listen to what their bodies are saying and recognizing where it is that God is giving them, hedging them in those
Mm-hmm.
lines, and not walls, but just saying like, this is the path that I want for you, and
Yeah.
how you can honor this body I've given you in a way that in return is going to honor God.
Yeah. I always come back to the verse, and I can't say where it is, but the verse where it says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial, right? There's freedom. And like you said, you're allowed to have the cookie or have the cake, but we have to remember not everything is beneficial to our bodies, especially someone who in your family has autoimmune stuff that you really have to be mindful and be careful of how much and what you're fueling their body. So I love that. I love that you remind them of that and teach them that. And I'm sure it's hard some days though, because I know
Of
my kids.
course.
My kids are like sugar.
Totally. And again, like, I feel, the word balance gets thrown out so much,
Yeah, yeah,
balance this, balance that. I don't actually believe there's really balance. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
some days we are going to be
Yep.
like on it. We are going to
Mhm.
have, our proteins, our veggies, our fruits, our carbs. Like, it's going to be great.
Yeah,
And other days, sometimes I feed my kids cake for supper,
yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah.
It's all in this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But those are the days where they're like, yes, like that was an awesome dinner. Because we've done that before, where it's like ice cream for dinner, or, just kind of a day where it's just whatever. Because you don't want to restrict so much where you're almost putting your obsessions or you're on them. So it's this
Yeah,
fine line of that I sometimes find it hard, and you can, speak to this too, but find it hard to, as they're getting older, teaching them, okay, this is how we nurture a body, but also it's okay to have this, and for their minds to understand that sometimes it can be hard for them to get that.
absolutely. It's so hard. And I see myself doing this, this hard work of finding that line. So that hopefully in the wake of that, they
Mm,
can see that and just be pulled in and drawn into that.
yeah.
But again, like, this is taking me, I'm 37. This is taking me 37 years to figure this out. I need to realize that my children are still young,
Yeah.
and God willing, it won't take them 37 years.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a journey that they'll have to do for themselves.
Yeah.
And all I can do is a lot of prayer and
Absolutely.
model it in the fashion in which God has called me to. So
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. Good reminder. I was talking to my mom about that maybe last week, couple weeks ago, about how every generation feels like they want to do better. They want, for their kids to be better or to do better. And when you know better, right, education, knowledge, then you can pass that down and teach them to be better. And then I hope one day that my kids, your kid, like our kids will teach them to be better. And yeah.
let
So
it
when you were
be.
saying about it took you 37 years, I'm like, I feel you. I feel you. So going into like the faith side of things, how do you share that online? Because you're sharing about cake and posting these beautiful pictures. How do you share your faith online and intertwine that with the cakes, and like what does that look like? And how did you decide to start doing that too?
You know what? I can't actually remember how I did start. It's
Hmm.
been a while now. Um, I knew that when I very first started this whole caked by Katie thing. Um, before I even posted my first anything, I gave it to God and I said,
Yeah.
if this is what you want, then my hands are open. You
Yeah.
do what you want with this. And um, it's always my like life verse is what does it gain a man, or what does a
Mm,
prophet gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul?
mhm.
And that has always been my heart for that. So I could have 2 million followers, but what good is it if I'm not
Mhm.
pointing those 2 million followers to the Lord?
Yeah.
Um, and so it's always been every Sunday, I'll just post straight up scripture and my thoughts on it. Generally, it's what God's teaching me that week.
Mhm.
Um, and I've always just been really vulnerable about, where I am with the Lord, what He's
Mhm.
showing me, and intertwining that with Kate, because I see God through Kate.
Mm.
I see, some people will go out and they'll look at a sunset and they'll just be like, God is so mighty
Yeah.
and God is so big and so beautiful. And I feel that way when I have my little palette knife and I'm like swishing buttercream around and creating different effects and colors. And I think that's how cool God is.
Yeah.
He
That
can
is
give us
awesome.
these passions of literally sugar and butter.
Yeah.
And when we give that to Him, like, He can use that. And I think that just shows how amazing and miraculous He is. And
Yeah.
so literally every cake and cookie and brownie that I make, I see God in that and I share His goodness in that. And yeah, that's kind of how I intertwine it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a
I
weird thing.
No, but I love that so much because it is not to lessen it, but stereotypical to go and look at a sunset or go like that's me. When I'm out in nature and I look outside or look at the mountains or I'm at the beach, I'm like, wow, look at God. But that just shows how awesome God is, that you being made in the image of God and then using the talents and the gifts He's given you and the mind, and you can see God in cake and cook, like, and food and baking. I'm like, wow, that just blows my mind of just how big God is. He is not limited to, I made the sunset and I made the trees, and you know what I mean, which is
Yeah, totally.
amazing, but yet someone can see God. I just love that. I love that perspective. And now when I make a cake or cookies, I'm gonna look for God in that,
Do
because
it.
listen,
Absolutely.
let me just tell you, I am not a baker because I
No,
like to cook because I don't really follow recipe. I'm like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And baking, you have to be precise. And I'm like, I
I'm
so
out.
I know, I'm out. So next time I'm baking and I'm getting frustrated, I'm gonna look for God and it be like, okay, God, show me your
There you
beauty.
go.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think with like the food aspect of God, I think it's just such a beautiful gift He's given us. And that
Mhm.
you think of food, yes, we're fueling our bodies with it, but we also food is so much a community thing.
Yeah.
Food is a gathering.
Mm,
And I feel like that is every opportunity God has given us is like, let's gather.
yeah.
We are, yes, we're honoring our bodies, we're fueling our bodies, but we're also given this opportunity to be in community with other people,
Hmm.
even at our table. Um, and the love that I can put into supper, um,
Hmm.
I hope goes and is showed to other people there sitting across the table from me. Um, and that it all gives glory back to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that so much. That's awesome. Do you ever find it hard to be vulnerable, especially online, but to be vulnerable with your struggles or be vulnerable in sharing your faith? I know you've been pretty open and honest online, about sharing your eating disorder and recovery and all of that. Do you ever find it hard to be vulnerable, and how do you how do you take that next step, or how do you overcome that and like, you know what, I'm just going to share it anyways?
Um, yeah, it's there are times when it's hard to be vulnerable and open.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have I will always, before I open my mouth or type anything down,
Mm-hmm.
I do always talk to God about it first
Mm-hmm.
and see if this is something that He is wanting me to follow through with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I have found from past experience, if it's not what He wants and I proceed anyways, there's hurt caused to other people or to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always seeking Him. And now looking back, I have seen so much beauty
Mm-hmm.
that God has woven from my pain to love other people.
Mm-hmm.
He just, I just always see it as God taking all this junk, this
Mm-hmm.
mess that I've
Mm-hmm.
made of things. And as I give it to Him, He weaves it into this beautiful tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
And then as He weaves this into a tapestry, He can then use it to cover other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my heart for it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when I feel scared, I go to God first
Yeah.
and then trust that He uses it all for His glory because He has
Mm-hmm.
and He will. He
Yeah.
doesn't change. He will.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Are there ever times you're just like, with the social media stuff, I just want to, I'm just done. Like I just don't want to show up.
Yeah, like every other week probably.
I know. Yeah. Oh man. I actually just announced today that I'm taking a break because I
Good.
had a hard day yesterday. Yeah. Just we're in this process of trying to move, and we've had a lot of life changes this last year, and showing up on social media has kind of been the place where I'm like, ugh, it's like the last on my list, which is fine, you know, but I just was like, okay, Lord, I feel like you're leading me to take a break. So, yeah, there are definitely those times where I feel like I have to step away and just give it a minute. And normally I come back refreshed or like excited to be back. Have you ever done that? Like taking a break and then or just been like and then you come back, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go.
Absolutely. I do regular social media fasts.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you get to a point where you pick up your phone to do your job and you're
Mm.
like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
feel that heaviness, that dread. And it's usually like, a week past when I should have put it down.
Yeah.
Um, and and God definitely leads me into times of just saying like, you
Yeah.
need a break. You need to
Yeah.
step away. And yeah, it's hard the first little bit, isn't it? Like, do you
Yeah.
struggle to like feeling like I'm missing out? I could be capitalizing on this opportunity. I could be doing
Yeah.
this.
I think the
Um,
struggle for me is if I'm thinking of it as a job and normal people like yeah, you take vacations and stuff, but you keep showing up for your job. You know what I mean? So sometimes I struggle with wait, this is still a job. I still need to show up, but yet I'm going to take a whole month off or I'm going to take a whole two. I couldn't do that at a normal job, you know? So that's where I
right.
kind of struggle. But I feel like social media is just this whole other monster in itself that you can't really compare it to showing up at a job at work. And even if you did need a minute from your going into just say a brick and mortar job, you still would be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it would. Absolutely. And I think that's where like boundaries come in really handy,
Yeah, yeah,
is having like some really firm, non-negotiable boundaries when it
yeah.
comes to that. As you would with, a regular job.
Mhm.
Um, if you're not on call and your boss
True.
calls at 9 p.m., Are you going to go in? I mean, some situations, yeah, you might.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
So yeah, just having boundaries around that. And I'm excited to see what your break does come out with, because I find those seasons are always they're hard, but there's always something like stirring something new, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we're in this season of waiting right now with our house being on the market and trying to sell it. And it's been on,
Hard.
yeah, it's been on since April. And I'm the type of person where I'm like, okay, God, what are you trying to show me? What are you trying to teach me? And I've always been like that. I've always been, I want to be a learner. I want to get better. And I've been finding the last couple weeks and asking God that and praying about it. He's just like, just chill with me. Just be still. Like there doesn't
That's
have to,
hard, isn't
it
it?
is. It's so hard to just be. And that was also kind of my decision to step away from social media for a little bit of, you know what? I just need to be. Stop trying to um not pour into or minister, but just take a moment to just let God fill you up instead of trying to pour out to everyone else. So that's or to try and learn something to get better or to grow, and because that's kind of how I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working for Revelation Wellness right now, so I still have that, but for my own personal stuff, and I feel like God's transitioning me because we're moving across the country. So I'm
Oh,
like,
it's all the way
okay,
across the country?
yeah, so we're going to Utah and
Oh
I'm
my
in Florida.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow, Torie.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. I know. So it's this
Wow.
big, huge thing. And I'm also just laying everything out and saying, okay, God, I've put our family, I've put our house, I've put where we live all out there. I also need to offer up my job, my social media, my business, what I do aside from Revelation Wellness, and say, okay, God, here it is. And so that also side
That's scary.
it is. It's really scary, but um, I don't know. You've probably experienced this before when you do it, and then it's like, wow, God's plan is so much better, and what God has is so much better than what I thought. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It always is. Um,
Even though it's hard.
but it's hard. It's hard, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel you on that. My goodness.
Yeah. Um, so what keeps you, speaking of all of the social media and just the demands, what keeps you motivated or what keeps you coming back? What keeps you going on those days? Even just fitness and health and taking care of yourself. What keeps you going when you're like, I don't, I don't feel like it today?
It's
Because I
it.
know so many people go off of how they feel, right? That's something that I really try and speak into often is we can't let how we feel. Now, if it's God leading us, that's different than just our feelings. And so many people try and just make decisions or do things off of how they feel. And a lot of that time is, I don't feel like working out. I don't feel like eating healthy. So, and that's why I asked you that question is what do you do to keep you going when you're like, I just don't feel like it today?
I've always held the saying of like feelings are good servants, but they're not good masters.
Yeah.
Um, so feelings are super helpful, but yeah, you can't let them make the decisions in your life.
Yeah.
So for motivation wise, it's probably not a great answer that you're looking for. I've always been a very intrinsically motivated person.
Yeah.
I like the hustle and I like the push and I like the working. So for motivation wise, I always go back to what's the truth.
Mm,
And a big part of recovery is your why.
hmm
Um, why are we, um, resting my body? Why am I eating 3 solid meals and snacks? Why are you doing
hmm
this? And my why is always for all of it is to show God to my daughters.
hmm
That is my why.
hmm
So my why for showing up, on a day when I have no desire to make a post about another cake.
Mm-hmm.
That's my why.
Yeah.
Um, my why to mostly, I don't ever need a why to work out because I'm here for it. But my why to take a Sabbath, to take a rest,
Yeah.
I need to remind myself my why is because that's what God has called me to.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to live that and do that to show it to my kids and
Yeah.
not just, spout it off to them. They
Yeah.
need to see it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Doing the hard things sometimes is what well, like what we should, or out of obedience of, I don't really feel like it, but I love that you have that why, because it's bigger than just, oh, I want to, you know, get tons of followers on social media, or I want to lose this weight, or whatever it is. Like, so many people have a why that when push comes to shove, you can just say, I don't
Yeah.
really care that much anyways. But something greater, like you said, showing God to your kids and your girls, and um it's so much bigger. That's something so much bigger than just something that you could be like, I don't
Yeah,
really
exactly.
care that much
It's
anyways.
it's like your root, it's the base. It's
Yes.
like it's that foundation.
Yeah.
Um, because all the other little whys, they'll come and go. And yeah, you can be
Yeah.
like, meh, not today. I'm really
Yeah.
not that concerned. But
Exactly. I don't
that
care that much.
foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your favorite thing about what you do?
Oh,
And there
great.
might be multiple things, but
I love what I really love is having a flavor idea, and I'm thinking like a new combination or yeah, and then figuring out how to bring that to life and
Mm,
pairing it together, having a recipe work, and then seeing it bring joy to people when they taste it. That's like the best part.
yeah.
It's just like success. Yeah. Like I nailed this flavor, or I had this vision of what I wanted a cake to evoke or look like.
Hmm.
And then doing it is like, it's such a great feeling.
Yeah. Do you ever surprise yourself in good or bad, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
maybe you thought something was
Absolutely.
going to be terrible and it was like really awesome.
Yeah. I'm very adventurous. And so I'm always like up to try new, weird, people would say it like super unappealing stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so when those especially work, it's
Yeah.
like, yes. And
Yes.
then there are some things that even I'm like, no, it's just
Yeah.
not Katie. Like, just set it down, move on. You got to keep
Yeah.
going.
I saw one of your posts one time. I think you were icing a cake and it wasn't turning out. And you were like, okay, gonna start over. And you started over and you're like, like so frustrated. I'm like,
Oh,
man, that's my life when I'm baking. Like,
we call
yeah,
them,
it doesn't
we
look
call
pretty,
them
but
like cake days. Like you can have a good day and a bad day.
yeah.
And I mean, I've been doing this for years. There are still days when, for whatever reason, everything you do
Ah,
is just not working out.
yep.
And at some point, you're just like, I'm calling it.
Yep.
I'm calling it. We're putting it in the fridge. We are going to go get some fresh air, some sunshine,
Yep.
because that's it. This cake
Yep.
has bested me.
Yep. Lay it down because
Yep.
today is not the day. Oh, that's so funny. So my very last question I have for you that I ask everyone that comes on is, what is something that has brought you joy either in the last week or couple weeks?
Um, well, now that it is officially like summer break
Mm,
and the weather has changed lately, the last couple weeks, when I do my Bible study in the morning, I've been able to open up the windows and I get like that cool morning
mm.
breeze, and then I
What
can
is
hear the
that like? You know?
I know, right? You're probably like smoking hot, and I'm like, It's finally like no snow.
Yeah.
Um, and I can hear the birds chirping outside the window. And that, I don't know what it is about hearing a bird.
Yeah.
It just gives me so much joy.
Yeah.
So much joy. So that's been, filling my cup lately.
Yeah, I love that. Like going back to the nature thing. I'm very much a nature. So when I go on walks and I can hear birds chirping, I'm like, it just like soothes my soul.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And sometimes I feel like an old lady saying that, but
Hmm.
it's just
No,
this
yeah.
gorgeous like song of nature. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. For me this last week, I stopped teaching my local fitness class last Tuesday. So this was the first Tuesday that a few girls took over, and I was so proud of them for
Yeah.
leading it and setting
Aw.
it all up. And they had their icebreaker ready, and they did such a good job. So
You
I'm
proud
still,
mama.
I know it was like, oh, like I instead of passing a torch, I passed them drumsticks. I was like, I'm passing the drumsticks
I
on.
love it.
But this was the first week because I thought we would be moving by now. We're still here. So I'm like, well, while we're still in town, I'm still gonna come to class. And so it's just excited to see them carry it on and lead it out and everything. So that's what brought me joy this last week.
That is so fun. And it was probably a blast getting to experience it from like the opposite end, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And not it actually, I think the biggest joy was not having to prepare for it.
Just show up
Just
and
show up and be like, okay, what do they have in store? When
yeah,
I walked in and I saw because I was doing icebreaker before. And when I saw the icebreaker stuff, I was like, oh, nice. And I was like, oh, wait, I actually have to participate in the icebreaker because normally I'm to the side just watching.
yeah. Oh, that's too
Or
funny.
not
Oh,
watching, but leading it and everything.
yeah.
But yeah, it was awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for coming on. This was a wonderful conversation and different because sometimes I feel like we don't think cake and sweets and God and fitness and wellness can
I know.
intermingle, but that just shows the creativity of God. It just shows just how we can't put God in a box. We can't
No.
limit him. We can't be like, this is what following God looks like.
Yeah.
It's so vast, and he is just so vast. So thank you for joining me this
Oh,
week.
this is a joy. Anytime I can talk about God and cake as like perfect start to my day. I love it. And I
Well, will you share where everyone can find you and follow you and look at all your beautiful, gorgeous cakes?
You can find me, my handle like across all social media boards is Caked by Katie. And then all my recipes, my blog is at cakedbykatie.com. That's
Awesome. I will
where I'm
put
at.
that, yep, I will put that in the description so people can find it easily and go look at all those beautiful cakes. Okay, friends, so this is it for season 1. I'm gonna take, just like I said,
Yay!
I know you're my last guest. I'm gonna take a little break.
Ah, I love
I'll be
that.
back in August for season 2 to finish out the year. So yes, thank you for being my very last guest for this. And I started this in January, so I'm like, I don't know where this is gonna go, but I've enjoyed talking to people. I've enjoyed teaching and doing stuff on this podcast. So
You're
thanks for
fabulous
being
at it.
being my final guest.
Oh, it's my joy. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, we'll see you in August.